I pick someone, their bid is worth $5 million. I win this job. I'm really, really happy. And now it's the next week, and I need to go and write this contract for asphalt. When I go to write the contract, suddenly I realize the cheapest person I'm using doesn't have the right insurance to work for the state. And so I
Mhm.
call them, and they're going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry. If you want that, it's going to cost you another $100,000 more." So
Mhm.
now, before my project ever starts, right, I've already lost $100,000. And my hope was that I was going to get this asphalt contract to be less than 5 million. The industry is always short on people. The departments never have enough manpower, and so no one's able to do really this check and this risk mitigation ahead of time in a very efficient way. And so really, you're just kind of rolling the dice, and you get burned a lot on these projects as they start, and you lose money before you ever put a shovel to the ground.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Bricks and Bytes podcast, where we dive into construction and AEC technology. Before we get started, though, if you're a startup founder or operator responsible for innovation in your company, or you want a deeper, more insightful look into technology in AEC, you won't want to miss our newsletter. From deep dives into particular technologies such as AI, robotics, design, software, and so on. Hot takes from investors betting big in AEC technology, and advice on building tech companies, including the stories and takeaways of the most successful AEC technology founders. Head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today to get this exclusive material straight to your inbox. And now for the episode.
We will dive into it. So, hello, Victor. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Martin?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. So today we have Victor from Trestle. Um, so Victor, tell us what is Trestle, and how did you come up with the name, actually?
Yeah. So Trestle is a AI-driven risk management department for general contractors.
Hmm.
We take care of the whole life cycle of managing, compliance, qualifications, making sure that the subcontractor and suppliers they bring on their jobs are capable of doing the work. And we do all of that in an automated fashion. It's by their terms, so it's infinitely scalable. And yeah, think of us as a vendor risk department in a box. We came up with the name. Actually, that was a bit of a funny one because we were really trying hard to think of like really cool names for a company, but that was still very related to construction. And I had just come off of doing a really big job that had a lot of overwater bridges, and they happen to be called trestles. They were overwater trestles.
Hmm.
And we thought that, hey, we're sitting in this space between the general contractor and their subcontractors and suppliers, and really was helping them make that connection. So let's go with that name. Let's go with Trestle.
Hmm.
It's been not the easiest thing. People who are in the industry understand that they know what it is. But when we get approached by people who are not from the industry, they like won't really know how to pronounce the name. They really don't know where the word starts because our
Hmm.
website is gotrestle.com. So sometimes they'll put like the go with the T or the R. And so we get a lot of emails that are this mix of our name, but it's in a very weird, mishmashed way.
Okay, I'll ask you about go-to-market slightly later. Maybe you can explain what are your tricks for that. But so tell us about your background. Like, how did you come up with the idea? And yeah, what were you working on before in the past?
Yeah. So I'm a civil engineer by trade. I went to school for that. I'm a licensed engineer here in New York. Spent about 15 years working for general contractors, mainly in the infrastructure space. So think about bridges, tunnels, roads, things like that. I was heading up an estimating department before, jumping over and decided to jump headfirst into the startup world.
Mhm.
And when you're in estimating, you deal with a lot of subcontractors, suppliers, especially during the bid phase. It's very high pressure. You don't have a lot of time. You need to make sure that the people that you interact with, are qualified and they are the lowest bidders in most of the time. So you want to make sure that who you select, they're able to do the work. And we found that there was a lot of inconsistencies in being able to get sufficient information in the bidding department, which typically sits in the head office, and getting the information that the field had, and even getting information that other departments had. And so we thought, hey, this can't be the best way of doing things. I think people don't think that construction is this big data business, but really at the end of the day, it is. It's just very, very fragmented, and I think almost every construction tech founder would agree. And so we thought, hey, let's see if there's a better way to solve our data problem related to managing subcontractors and suppliers, and that's how we got started with Trestle.
So if I try to paraphrase, so am I getting it correctly that that Trestle is a baseline layer for vendor validation?
It could be.
Hmm.
I would say in the biggest picture, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
We are managing the relationship between general contractors and the vendors.
Hmm. So maybe to explore the problem a little bit more, like why did it occur to you that this is a problem worth solving and spending a few years on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the problem really comes up in a lot of different ways. I'll give you one example. So in the bidding phase, this is where the general contractor is trying to chase after a project, right? Imagine I'm a general contractor and I'm here in New York and I want a job with the New York State Department of Transportation. So typically, I don't do, a lot of the work that's required in this project. And this project could be building a new road. So I need to go and find someone who's going to lay the asphalt for the road. And at the bid time, I'll usually get three or four prices. And I don't have a lot of time to make a decision on, hey, has the best price that I'm going to include in my bid to the state.
You go for the
So
cheapest usually.
I go for the cheapest, right? And
Yeah,
you hope that you've captured all the risk.
yeah.
So I pick someone, their bid is worth $5 million. I win this job, I'm really, really happy. And now it's the next week and I need to go and write this contract for asphalt. When I go to write the contract, suddenly I realize the cheapest person I'm using doesn't
Mhm.
have the right insurance to work for the state. And so I
Mm.
call them and they're gonna say, oh, I'm sorry, if you want that, it's gonna cost you another $100,000 more. So
Uh-huh.
now, before my project ever starts, right, I've already lost $100,000, and my hope was that I was going to get this asphalt contract to be less than 5 million. So,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things like that where you have the opportunity if we were able to do some more work ahead of time to mitigate that risk, and so you don't lose that money when you start the project. But the industry is always short on people. The departments never have enough manpower, and so no one's able to do really this check and this risk mitigation ahead of time in a very efficient way. And so really you're just kind of, rolling the dice and you get burned a lot on these projects as they start. And you lose money before you ever put a shovel to the ground.
I'll probably simplify here asking this question, but is there like a checklist of things that you guys check, or like what's the process of Trestle handling the vendors?
Yeah. So Trestle takes that person that figures out, hey, these are all the different pieces of paperwork that you need to work for us. We take that person's knowledge and put it into our software, and then we're able to perform all of the work that this person would normally do. And it doesn't matter if against one vendor or against 10,000 vendors, we can do it all in about 5 minutes. And
Mm.
that then creates that efficiency. And that's what makes Trestle really unique.
Is there like a area of consultancy there, or that's all automated right now?
Yeah, it's all automated. Really, we sit down with the risk department, the risk manager from the general contractor client of ours,
Mhm.
and then it takes us about a few hours to get them set up. And within 24 hours, they can get going. And the system is all automated, and they can check for as many different things as they would like,
Mhm.
even with very custom questions like, "Hey, do you have a special hazmat permit to move hazardous materials in your trucks?"
Yeah. So maybe I'll ask you about the business, a few questions, and then we move on to different things. So, how big is the team right now, and where are you on your Trestle mission?
Yeah, the team is 7 people today. We just brought on a head of product, which is really exciting. And we are, I would say, still at the very early stages. We have our first product out, this automated risk department, which is really cool. We have, a handful of general contractors on board. We have a few thousand vendors on the system as well. And yeah, we're really excited to go out there and bring on more general contractors, which has been great. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. And we're now thinking about, what's the next act? This was our opening act. This was really setting us up for a much bigger picture that we have in mind for Trestle.
So sounds like you will be raising soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where would you spend money on at this moment, and what stage would that be of money raising?
Yeah. We will be going out for our seed raise, for a proper seed round. And really that money is going to growing the engineering team so that we can build out our greater vision, and then also growing our sales and our customer support team. For us, it's very, very important that the customers at the end of the day are happy, that both the general contractors or the vendors, are able to get what they need to do on our platform and then get on with their business. We understand that ultimately for them, right, the mission is to make more revenue, to do more work, and then to grow their book of business. And it's not just to come on the Trestle and do compliance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how about this one? So you right now you've got you said few thousand vendors, a few customers, contractors, I guess. What's the business model here? Are you charging contractors? You charging vendors? What's the maths behind it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there were definitely a lot of learnings here for us as well. We found that the market as a whole, is really built on relationships, right? Construction is a relationship heavy business. And we found that those who were charging the vendors, was seen as essentially destroying some of that relationship that the general contractor has with their vendors. And so our business model is very
I'm
much
sure
focused.
initially at this initial stage is not probably recommended to charge the vendors, but at some point things can flip.
Yeah, and we have, we want to make sure that when we go and charge someone, that we're actually providing them a value, right? And I
Uh-huh.
think that really is the most important thing. So right now we charge general contractors. We are providing a significant service for them, right? We're coming in there and being their risk department, and so it's very easy for us to, hey, let's total up how much this will cost you to do with people, and then let's see what Trezor can do for a fraction of that cost. And then for the vendors, there is no charge for them to submit their information. However, there are certain premium features we've built into Trestle that if they want to utilize that, there is an opportunity for them to essentially come onto a premium tier.
Is it? I can see a great opportunity as a Trestle becoming as also a marketplace to a degree for these people, for the vendors
Yeah,
potentially.
I think you've nailed it on the head. That's definitely our large big picture vision.
Okay.
We want to take this information that we have and then be the best at matching general contractors with the correct vendors that can do the business for them in the most safe,
Mhm.
least risky way. And then we also can help the vendors grow their own businesses.
Brilliant. So you touched on this big vision. So right now we've got automated risk department. Like, what are the products or features that you would like to develop to ultimately get into this big picture vision? Yeah, tell us more.
Yeah. For us, like you said, the automated risk department is really just the beginning. This
Mhm.
allows us to have a good understanding of what each general contractor's risk appetite is and what kind of vendors that they would like to work with, and also what information the vendors have. For us, the next product here is a smarter next generation invitation to bid system. All of the current ones that are in the market were built a decade or more ago. And so we believe that with AI, we can build something that is much, much better, that really serves the needs of the industry, and it also is able to, do it in a really efficient way. An invitation to bid, if you think about it, is a quoting engine. Essentially, it allows the general contractor to say, hey, these are the jobs that I have. This is what I'm looking for out in the market for vendors. And then the vendors can come in and say, great, I now know that these are the people I can work for. These are the people that I have the best chance of winning a job with. And Trestle would be the one that facilitates and provides all of those insights with our AI engine.
What's your timeline?
I'm gonna keep that under wraps for a little bit.
Okay. Great. How do you assess like total addressable market within what Trestle does?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think finding the total market of construction in the US, depending on what sector you're working in, is a little bit difficult because a lot of these businesses, they don't really have a strong internet presence. So, a lot of these like data scraping tools aren't very useful in doing that. What we found to be the best is if you look at membership in the general contractor associations across the US. So something like the AGC, the GCA, the ABC, all of these different associations, you can get a sense that there's about 60 to 70,000 general contractors in the
Mhm.
US market. And then if you take a look
Question
at,
here, Victor.
yeah,
Within what size of general contractor are you looking for, and are you describing right now as well?
yeah. So Trestle is built for general contractors that are doing $75 million a year in revenue and more.
Mhm.
And when we think about these 60 to 70,000 general contractors, I would say we're looking at people that are, right in that range.
Mhm.
A general contractor doing, $100 million in business a year is considered on the smaller end of the spectrum.
Mhm. How did you come up with this very precise $75 million? What happens? What happens at 74, and what happens at 75?
At 74, they're doing completely different things, and at 76, they're building spaceships.
Hmm.
It's just a lot of trial and error. We've done a lot of sales calls now. We have a very good understanding of at what size the business grows and becomes diversified. And I think that's where Trestle really starts to provide a lot of value. If you are a very specialized contractor, imagine you're someone, let's go back to the asphalt paving example. If you're a paving contractor, you'll be making 50, 60, maybe even $100 million or more. But generally, there is a very like concise limit to, hey, if you're so focused on one scope, this is how much money you're making. Once
Hmm.
you get bigger and you want to chase those bigger jobs, you start to encounter different types of work in those jobs that you don't do yourself. So you need to go and find subcontractors and suppliers. And we
Hmm.
found that really that's around the mark. The one caveat I'll add in here is that depending on if you're in commercial construction, so think about like buildings, fit outs, data centers, things like that, that limit for us is a little bit lower because in those cases, they're typically subcontracting out all of the work. But if you're building bridges and roads and tunnels, that limit is a little bit higher because typically in the contract, you have to do a lot of the work yourself per the requirements of the owner.
Great. Tell me how you're thinking about. Uh, I will try to push back a little bit. Let's see what you've
Yeah.
got. So, there is lots of cases where general contractors have their own lists of approved contractors that they subcontract works for, and people need to get on this list to become the approved subcontractor, and there can be 10 of them or 15 of them or six. So how don't you see this way of, or maybe you've got a product for these general contractors to streamline this process somehow? And yeah, how does this resonate with this status quo that there is people have lists of approved contractors, people that they always go to, and they have long-standing relationships for years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think you've nailed it right on the head there. So Trestle would take over that entire process of managing that list for them.
Hmm.
We know that again, right? Construction is so relationship driven, and so you will have situations where general contractors say, "Hey, I always work in this area. I always know these people, and I feel comfortable."
Hmm.
But most of the time, that relationship is on a higher level, right? It's like executive to executive, they have a relationship, and that's why they're doing this. We found that through, just our customers using Trestle, when they're actually out in the field performing and working with these subcontractors they really like to use all the time, there are still things that kind of fall through the cracks.
Hmm.
One of the ways that Trestle is very unique is we can capture how a subcontractor is actually doing on your jobs from your own employees. And so we'll find things like, hey, we always use XYZ guy for drywall. And
Hmm.
and they're great. They have a great relationship. At the end of the day, project managers are happy. But while they're working on the job with us, they never bring, their own man lifts. And so we have to take a few $1,000s every week out of our budget to give them, this piece of equipment.
Mhm.
And this is something where you as a general contractor, you're losing money on that job.
Yeah.
But at the end of the 24 months, you don't remember that you lost, 10, 100, $200,000. And
Mhm.
now Trestle is able to keep track of that. And so we're not saying, hey, we're not coming in here and telling you to go use somebody else. We're actually helping you even optimize the people that you do like
Mm.
to work with so that you find those little places where you're losing profit that you didn't even
Yeah.
know that you were losing, and then you can recapture it.
Well, I love this point actually because sometimes these approved lists of contractors are, like you said, at the top level between executives, and then there's like lots of inefficiencies happening at the lower level, and through the execution of works, which is not noticed, yeah, because we've always been using them. That's the status quo kind of conversation. Okay. You mentioned sales calls that you've done. You guys done quite a lot of sales calls. Uh, like, tell me what's the how do you like what sales calls are like in your case? Like, what's the feedback from customers? Maybe you can mention these few contractors that you work with, not necessarily by names if you don't want to, but tell me what the feedback is.
Yeah, sales is definitely not easy. I would say that I didn't have any kind of a sales background, and it's one of the things that we've had a lot of hard-learned lessons going into.
Mhm.
One of our team members now is a just an absolute superstar of account executive, which is great.
Mhm.
And he's running a lot of processes, and we were able to iterate on this a lot in recent months. From the customers, what we find is that there is no one specific title that you can go after that does the same role across all of the construction companies.
Mm.
In some construction companies, we'll go in there and we'll try to talk to the risk manager. In others, it's a compliance person. Sometimes it's the CFO, and sometimes it's like a head of pre-construction. And so it takes a few calls to get in to find, who really is the person that owns the process that Trestle will help them deal with. And
Mhm.
ultimately, we find that, when we talk about finding unrealized profits, finding hidden profits for the company, it's the CFO, right? The CEO that really, really cares about it. But
Mhm.
to find that right person, actually, it definitely takes a lot of phone calls. One of the things that we found that's really interesting is that if we do 1,000 emails outbound, maybe we'll get a hit rate of 4 to 5% where people will say, yeah, okay, like tell me about it. But it's
Mhm.
very, very hard to book a meeting with a general contractor with just emails. I think with the rise of AI, there's just so
Mhm.
much spam that nobody cares about what your email is.
Mhm.
But we find that if we do 1,000 calls, maybe
Mhm.
we'll get 20% of those answered, and out of the 20%, we'll convert maybe 30% of those to actual booked meetings, and people will sit in for the demos. And so, phone calls is not dead in this industry. That is the way to get your customers in front of you and to get yourself in front of them.
Mhm. Okay, so the current go-to-market strategy in your case is outbound emails and then booking the calls. What else? What else have you got?
Yeah, in person. I think construction is
Mm.
definitely a big, big in-person industry. So every time we go to the conventions, go to the different expos, we find that that's been great. You can interact with the people. I love talking shop with them, so they feel more comfortable. Hey, it's not just another salesperson here trying to sell me a piece of software.
Mhm.
That's really helpful for us. We find that at the conventions, our conversion rate is about 20%. So
Mhm.
really, it's significantly higher. We also find really unique ways of using things that Trestle does really well that no one else can do.
Mhm.
One of those is that we're able to process information in under 5 minutes. And so we'll try to go to different outreach expos that the general contractors have, where they're trying to attract subcontractors and suppliers to come work on their
Mm.
jobs. And we'll say, hey, let Trestle come help you. We'll make sure that just by scanning a QR code, you guys can exchange information, and you don't just exchange a business card. Trestle can tell you right then and there if this subcontractor is fit to work with you based on your specific risk and appetite for this project. And
Mhm.
so we're essentially making that entire process of doing compliance checks live as they're talking.
Mhm. Have you found some like hidden tactics in these conferences that they work from a go-to-market point of view? Like what works well? As you said, 20%
Um,
conversion rate, right? That's very good, I think.
yeah, I think grabbing them off the floor and like getting a
Hmm.
hold of them and just having the conversation.
Hmm.
I think that part is definitely the toughest. You need to be out there. You need to be talking to the people. We see a lot of the conventions that people will stand behind the booth and kind of wait for someone to come to them, or wait for someone to see something written on their booth and say like, "Oh, that's interesting. Let me talk to you." I think you really need to be just out there on the floor, stopping people. Hey, let me just learn about you.
Hmm.
I think people start to sell too fast. You need to learn about who you're talking to,
Hmm.
and then learn about their problems, and then you can bring them in and say, hey, this is what we do. This is how we relate to what it is that you're struggling with right now.
Hmm. What are like common pushbacks from customers' point of view that you hear as like a first point of defense, and which are probably not justified? But like, tell us about it.
Yeah, I'll tell you one example. I had a really great one. It was with someone that I had worked with before, and they made a very warm introduction to who they thought was the ICP in their company.
Hmm.
And so I gave them a call, and this person picked up the phone, and I introduced myself, nothing else. Like, this is just Victor from Trestle, and I heard the loudest sigh you could possibly hear on the phone, and it was just like, I don't have time for this. Don't call me. And that's it.
Wow.
And really, we hear that a lot. We'll start, and people they don't want to hear what it is that you're saying. They're like, "Hey, I'm busy. I don't care. I don't have any problems. The way things are going are the way things will always be."
Hmm.
And I think that's the hardest thing. If you can get
Hmm.
past that,
Yeah.
then you can have a conversation at least.
How do you get past that? I do the same things many times, so I know how sometimes difficult it is, and not necessarily like banging through the door works well, because I know based on my example that it sometimes does not.
Yeah. One of the things we found is you can't really take it too personally. And I think you need to be a little bit empathetic about the other person too. Sometimes they're just having a bad day, and so
Hmm.
you call them back the next week, and they're like very happy to have a conversation. And so sometimes that very first call that you make, and they hang up on you, maybe they're busy doing something else, maybe they're just having a bad day. So we try to call them back again. We'll try to send them an email and then follow up with that, or talk to someone else in the company. We found that that's been really helpful. You really need to make like multiple touch points in the company, and then once you have a meeting booked, you invite everyone into the meeting together, and
Hmm.
then this way opens the door for you for a lot of different points of contact in that company. But you just got to keep going. That's it.
Hmm. Okay, Victor, what is how do customers measure ROI on your platform? Yes, maybe this and but then I'll touch on the charging in a second, maybe.
Yeah. So our general contractor customers take a look at what their current process is like. We have this really nifty ROI calculator that we sit down and do with them, and it essentially shows them this is what your risks are before you started your in-house process. This is what your risk exposure is if you use Trestle. Here's how much it costs you right now to mitigate these risks with your process. Here's what it is with Trestle. And it's a very clear, there's X millions of dollars that you're not capturing profit, and it's costing you, hundreds of thousands of dollars in full-time employees. Trestle can take care of all of that for a fraction of the price. And we found that that is really the most effective way. We've gotten some conversations early on in our sales process where people would just say, just tell me how much it is, because I know how much this should cost. And we find that that is the deepest, biggest trap you can possibly fall into, right? As a founder selling, because
Why?
you don't get to present your value at all. That
Mm,
person just thinks that they understand what it is that they're buying, and then they're going
mm,
to put a price on what it is they're buying from you, right? Without knowing anything. It's like, hey, Martin, I'm a car salesman, right? And I'm going to sell you a car. And you say, I don't care what the car is, it's $100. And you say, okay,
yeah.
it could be a Ferrari, right? Or
Uh,
it could be, I don't know, a Lada, but you don't know.
mhm,
Uh, and we find that until you tell them that first,
mhm.
it's like that's a dead conversation. But for ROI, we really walk them through it and make them comfortable. Hey, this is actually going to happen for you.
Mhm. So is it, how do you measure the ROI then? Is it in, let's say, let's say this cost of risk is I don't know, $100,000, then you doing like 3x, you decreasing this cost, or like what sort of ROI are we talking about, or is it less or more?
Yeah. So we'll say, hey, there's, let's say X millions of dollars of profit that you're currently not capturing,
Hmm.
right? Uh, for the cost of Trestle, you're gonna get more than 100x return on that. And
Oh.
we'll take a look at how many full-time employees you're using, and we'll say Trestle's gonna cost, less than a tenth of the cost it takes for all these full-time employees. And so when they come on the Trestle, they can take a look at what they're paying, and they can see, oh, yes, these 10 people that we used to use for risk and compliance management, they're all spending their time doing something else now because Trestle has handled all of the work that they used to do.
Hmm.
Hey listeners, I want to take a quick break to remind you about the Bricks and Bytes newsletter. If you're interested in learning about the technology shaping the future of construction, you won't want to miss the valuable insights we share each week. To get this exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, head over to www.bricks-bytes.com and sign up today. Link is in the show notes. Back to the show.
Any interesting ways of capturing, acquiring these vendors, and how do you do it?
Yeah, there is so huh, let's see, how should I answer this question without giving away too much of the secret sauce? Um, the industry, I've mentioned a few times, right? The industry is very relationship driven. The
Mhm,
industry really, really likes in-person events.
mhm,
We've had a lot of success at in-person events, both with the general contractors and then also in talking with the vendors and the subcontractors. Um, there is a very, very unique opportunity here that Trestle takes advantage of in making these opportunities happen more and more frequently, right? We ultimately
mhm,
want to be the facilitator of all of the interactions between the general contractor and their vendors. And so one of the ways we do that is with in-person events as well.
mhm. Okay. Um, so what's the like sales cycle that you think you have? How long does it take? Is it slow? Is it fairly fast, or it varies? What you got here?
Yeah. Um, I think enterprise SaaS is already in itself not a fast process, right?
Mhm,
Almost everything is bought by committee. I think when you add in construction and its understanding of software and technology as a whole, it's also not a very fast process. So if you multiply like slow times slow, it just gets slower.
mhm,
For us, typically, the sales cycle is something like 60 to 90 days. It's multiple meetings. It's always by committee. And for us, it's just really just a matter of finding the right person to become that internal champion, going up the ladder, booking the next meeting, making sure that we're able to clearly arm them with the correct information to go to their bosses and to go to their CFOs and their committees and say, hey, this is going to help us. Come and we'll show you how. And then Trestle will go in there, be able to have that conversation and move it along. But it's definitely not, hey, we showed you something. Tomorrow you're going to sign, and then next week, we're going to get you started.
mhm. Okay. Just actually, I should have asked it earlier, but is Trestle dealing with vendors providing services for like engineering, civil engineering works, or is it also like fit out and later stages of construction?
Yeah, Trestle deals with vendors in every form. We have subcontractors who are doing foundation work. We have engineering firms who provide engineering during construction. We have delis where we're managing just and keeping track of the spend that the general contractor and their projects have with a specific deli or caterer that
Mhm,
they're buying all their lunches from. So really, we're there to manage any and all of the vendors that the general contractor interacts with.
mhm. So you having a civil engineering background, do you think it is definitely allowed you to spot the idea and to pursue it? But do you think um, having the engineering background does it help you as a startup founder, or it is sometimes not helping?
Great question. Um, Definitely a little bit of both, right? I think on the product side, it's helpful because I can kind of put myself in the shoes of what I used to do and think, hey, do I want this? Is this how the process works? And that's governed a lot of how we've built Trestle and why people like it.
Mhm.
Where it doesn't help is, as you know, engineering construction is very, very linear, right? You're always working off of the schedule. You're always building, hey, you got to drill the foundation before you can pour the concrete slab on top before you can do this.
Mhm.
I think as a startup founder, especially when you're building a
Mhm.
software product, things are constantly moving and there's always new things that you don't know about. So it's very hard to get your hands on a schedule, right?
Mhm.
Or some kind of timeline that you can hold to, and you know, hey, if things are delayed, how can I crash that schedule, right? I don't know that crashing the schedule really exists when you're a startup founder. It's more of
Mhm.
just like there's always new things happening, and then you just are gonna figure out how to deal with those new things. And there is no like P6 schedule on your wall that tells you how you're gonna get from 0 to 1.
So it sounds like it's like tiling the bathroom on the second floor just after foundation pour.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You mentioned that you recently recruited a head of product. What is he or she going to work on? And yeah, why did you choose this person?
Yeah. So our head of product is one of the most crucial roles that we've hired for the company. For us, we understand that it's really important that we create a experience for both the general contractors and the vendors that is pleasant and that it actually addresses, specifically the issues they're trying to solve. Right? We don't want to create something where we say, hey, we think this is what we like and we want you to use it. That's one of the biggest complaints we hear is that, hey, we buy a piece of software, we have to change our company's policies and processes to fit this piece of software because that's what it is. And we never want to get to that state. So, this product person is interacting with the customers on a day-to-day basis. They're very, very deep in, what should be built, how it should be built, how that experience should be. And for us, that is critical. I think it's also important for us to be able to translate what is the big picture vision that Trestle has into actual executable pieces of product, right? I
Mhm.
think a lot of times, especially I would say from the construction side, where, like myself, we're not technical. And so we'll have these big visions on how things should be. And then I would say have a limited understanding in how things can be, right? Or how they can be created. And so that product person is also there to say, great, I've heard all of the problems that you have, all of our customers have, and I've heard none of their solutions. I'm going to go and now, right, figure out what is the right solution for their problems instead of what is the right solution for their solutions.
Mhm.
Um, that's how we built out our risk management platform. And we found that that was really the key to building something that was unique and different and actually the contractors liked because they kind of just told us, don't worry about all this other stuff. We know that you understand how the process works. Here's the end state we want to get to. Just give me this end state. And then we were able to build backwards actually to get there. And so once we realized that the importance of that, we said, okay, let's get someone who's going to be dedicated to doing that in the company.
What were the key features that you were looking for in the head of product role?
We needed someone who was very, very eager to understand the industry, right? I think nearly everyone we would go out there and be able to hire would not have as deep of an industry experience as I have. And so we needed someone who was really, really willing to learn, who was really fascinated and curious about processes, less so about, hey, what's the biggest hype thing that's happening right now? And we needed someone who really was able to sit down once they've heard all of the things and be organized and be able to structure out these are the problems I heard. Here's how we get to an end solution. I think having structure is really, really important. Like I was saying before, right? I'm always looking for like a P6 schedule for how we're going to do this. So having a product person who does have that structure, I think allows us to communicate in a very effective way. And then being curious, right? You need to understand and be an expert in the field that you're building for. And yeah, people can come in and be like, yes, I want to work at a startup,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm only going to bring in the experiences I've had in the past, and that's it. And you're like, that's not really going to cut it for us, right? Now you're building in construction for a startup. You need to understand everything there is to know about this sector and the space that we're in.
Okay. Um, why? How do you know it's the right time for you to raise money?
Yeah. When we look at our sales pipeline and we look at
Uh-huh.
how many people are coming to meet with us, and how
Oh.
many conversations are moving along, I think that is a great indicator where we're like, oh man, we're barely having enough time to talk to these 30 people that have booked meetings in the past 4 weeks,
Uh-huh.
and more of them keep showing up. And if we close, a fraction of that, our engineering team is going to be swamped. And so, right, let's not have a situation where we close a bunch of customers and we're super happy, and then a month from now, we don't have the engineering resources to support them, right? I
Right.
think that would be probably the worst case scenario where you have success and then you die because of your success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. So you must be seeing right now some sort of, or you have been seeing for a while now, some sort of inflection point happening that then there's lots of calls, there's lots of people interest, and you just need to tackle it in the right manner. So the raising money from ventures is the right way. What other metrics have you noticed that made you feel like, okay, this is the right time to raise?
Yeah. One, I think is our current user KPIs. So we're seeing that there's an uptick in the number of vendors coming onto the system and
Mhm.
submitting information. There is an uptick in the number of GC users coming in and checking for that information. And also there's an increase in the number of essentially variations that they're building. Um, just touch that really briefly. One of the things that we do that no one else can do is we allow the general contractor to not just check for like one set of requirements, they can create an infinite amount of those. And what that means is instead of making sure that someone's compliant to work for their company as a whole, they can make sure that that person's compliant to work for a specific project for them. And so
Mhm.
once we see that a general contractor is coming on and creating more and more of these variations, we know that they like using Trestle and that they're expanding Trestle into other more granular ways of checking, right? And that is a key indicator for us that, okay, we've got something that people like to use on the GC side. And then from the sales side, when we had uh, 5 meetings in a month, we know that, hey, we're still trying to get the messaging right. We're still not figuring out what our ICP is. When we've got 30 meetings sat in a month, suddenly we know, hey, there's something here. We've at least figured out, right, how to go and get people interested. We figured out how to pinpoint the pain points and get them to the table. And now as we're seeing more and more deals become the second deal, okay, moving on to the third deal, and moving on to the final closing meetings and going faster and faster, that's when we're like, okay, we figured out something here. Let's continue on. Let's keep building on that momentum.
Uh-huh. So when it comes to these meetings, like what's your strategy to acquire this customer? Do you give them some pilot, or they have how? Maybe let me start from this angle. How difficult is to operate Trestle software or platform? Do they need to get a 2 weeks pilot with 2 engineers sitting with them every single day, or is it more like a like plug and play scenario that is very simple? Yes, so that's one. And like, what's your strategy? Do you give pilot to them, or they can use the software for some time for free? How does it work?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you asked that. We can get a customer started on Trestle, doing automated compliance checks in 24 hours. And it's very, very straightforward to use. We can sit with them for about an hour and get it set up, and they can do the rest. I'll give you an example. One of our biggest customers, we gave them the software, and we said, okay, we're gonna come back, in a week and set this up for you. And in a week, we called them back and we said, hey, we see that you already had set up everything and you're using it already. Can you give us a little feedback? And his response was, well, I don't know why you need to sit with me. I have eyes and I can read, and I was able to set everything up on my own.
Mhm.
And so for us, we thought, wow, that's the best thing
Mhm.
that we can hear, right? It means that we built something that you understand intuitively, and you were using it before you needed anything from us. And so to answer your question, incredibly easy to set up, and you don't need to spend a lot of time at all.
Mhm.
To get them up and going, we can offer a pilot if the customer wants it, and we find that some customers do want to make sure that hey, things work as you promised, right? They've gotten burned in the past by other salespeople, and so we do provide them that pilot. But we do also let them know that because Trestle touches on so many parts of their operating processes,
Mhm.
that they need to be committed as well, right? That we need to go and build certain integrations. We need to pull in the database of all of their vendors into our system. And so it's not something like, I can go onto Figma or Canva and test it out on my own without
Mhm.
any kind of interaction. There
Mhm.
is, interface with Trestle that's needed.
Yeah, yeah. When you say that, I think you said something like the Trestle touches on multiple like parts of the operations, right? So that what I can see is that there's potential concern from like a larger general contractors about the data safety, and as we speak with lots of larger and medium-sized contractors, this comes up as a one of the pain points that they say when they evaluate startups. There's like lots of startups which are not ready for compliance from when they want to connect the data to this large general contractor. There is straight away kind of like a red flag. They are not ready for it, and they don't have an answer how they will manage the data safety. Yeah, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think that's super, super important. So obviously, the typical SOC 2 compliance, we provide a single sign-on, so it makes security much easier. Nearly all of the general contractors we come across are using a Microsoft suite of products, so it's a single sign-on with Azure. Um, all of our data is hosted in the US. We have certain customers who work on federal projects that have that as a requirement. And so we are very well aware of that. I would say that, having worked in this industry, having read a lot of the specifications for the projects and what's needed there from a technical security perspective, we make sure to build a software that is compliant with that so that we don't have customers who are going to say, we would love to use Trestle, but, we do these types of projects and we can't if you don't have this. And for us to say, oh man, like we don't have that. So I guess you're not going to be a customer of ours. Um, all the data is contained within their instance of Trestle. So each general contractor, when they're leaving like performance reviews, that never goes out of their system. We're not sharing the data with anybody else. These are things that are very, very important for us.
Uh-huh. When you're thinking about raising money for the seed round, like who do you want to raise from? You don't have to say like particular names of companies, but you're looking for general investors or construction tech specific, or maybe
Yeah,
some other persona.
yeah. That's a good question as well. Man, Martin, a lot of good questions. Um,
Sorry.
Yeah, for a lead, we would definitely be looking for a generalist fund. We had a generalist fund lead our pre-seed, and they've been nothing but amazing to work with. I remember going into that first meeting, talking with them, and specifically saying, "Hey, listen, I have a lot of industry experience, right? We can use more help there, definitely, but I think to get this business started off the ground running, that's not where we need the most help. What we don't know is we don't know how to run a business, right? We don't know how to run a startup, a venture-backed business. And so that's where we need a lot of help in, thinking about how we should be doing product builds, thinking about go-to-market, thinking about sales, thinking about, our first hires, the engineering team, how to build that out, the culture, all of those things. And I think for those things, it's kind of ubiquitous across all kinds of businesses, right?
Mhm.
So I don't need someone who's construction specific to come and help me with that. I need someone who's just a really, really good value add venture capital firm who's going to be able to come in and say, we've done this with a bunch of different businesses across a bunch of different sectors, and we know what this success looks like. And so for us, the next round, we're a very similar approach. We want a generalist fund, preferably someone who's very, very good at go to market, because that's where we're going to be, really tackling next, right? Going there, selling, figuring out the right channels and the right tricks on top of what we already have. And then I think as someone that's maybe the second check or the third check, into the cap table next would be still a sector specific. I think there are still a lot of relationships that can be formed. And like, we've said a million times now, construction is so relationship driven. So if someone can open the doors and make the introductions for us, I think that is huge as
Hmm.
well. So we don't want to downplay that. But I think,
Hmm.
for us, first and foremost is, hey, someone who still is very, very good at helping startups in our stage operate their business and accelerate the business.
That's very interesting. So it can open a bunch of other questions. But well, you will be sensitive with your answers. I will just ask it. So, what's your thoughts on the? So you thinking the more specialist funds, they would not have enough, I don't know, experience maybe is the right word, or approach for a scaling of the startup and construction, or why would generic investor be better in this?
Yeah. I think the generalist funds are generally bigger, right? They're also touching
Hmm.
on so many more different types of businesses. Their portfolios are larger. They've had a lot more, let's say, chances at bat, right? Iterations on the different businesses. It's not to say that the sector specific funds aren't as good. I think, we have one on our cap table now, and they're great.
Hmm.
Um, but I think they generally are smaller funds, right?
Hmm.
They generally have less companies in there. And so, if you want, it's like, do you want a surgeon that's done, a million surgeries, right? Or do you want the surgeon that's done 1,000? The one that's done 1,000 could be really specialized, really, really good at what they're doing.
Hmm.
But if I'm just playing statistics, right? I'm like, hey, I also want to talk to that person who's seen everything there is to see,
Uh-huh.
and then to tell me that, like, in one glance, right, like, hey, you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, and hey, maybe you don't want to do that.
Uh-huh.
I will add that one of our best investors right now, they're not a big fund at all, but every time we've gone and had a conversation with the partner, they're like, okay, here's what's going on, and it's like they have like this crystal ball, and they'll say, "Here's what's going on. Here's what I see you should be thinking about, and then this is what the outcome is going to look like."
Uh-huh.
And in the times when we don't take their advice, I call them, 6 months later, maybe 6 weeks later, and I'll say, "Ah, man, what you said was correct. I probably should have done that back then."
Mhm.
And they're very nice about it. They're like, "Yeah, of course. Like, we do this. We've done this for a decade. Like, we know what it looks like, right? And we know where
Uh-huh.
you are, and this is what happens."
Mm.
And yeah, and when we do what they say, we're like, oh, everything worked out great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is definitely something there to people who have seen everything, right? And really are able to pick up the patterns and be able to tell you your business you think is unique to you, but really we've seen this problem a million times. Go and fix it now before you learn that's a problem 6 months from now.
Very well said. I like that. Is the amount that you're raising kind of can be known, or is it secret?
We'll keep it under wraps for now.
That's fair. That's fair. Fine. Um, so we are at 51 minutes, and no one has said AI yet. So I need to start. Like, how much AI is within Trestle? Is there any?
Yeah. There is AI within Trestle right now. In our opening act, there's a lot of AI in processing the data, in validating the data, and also in doing the automated risk assessments. Um, for the next act of Trestle, there's going to be a whole lot more AI. What our first act allows us to do is to have access to a lot of data that we've collected that's proprietary, that is very hard to get if you don't get it from the source. And we're then going to be able to use that data along with our AI to actually provide a ton of insight, not only into, who the general contractor should be working with, but if you want to work with someone that Trestle's AI does not recommend, what your risk exposure there is, how much money you should be adding onto your project to cover yourself. And then on the other end, we'd be able to tell the vendors, which general contractors they don't know about that they're a perfect fit for, that they should go and submit a price to. And even once they do, how the pricing insights for what it is that they've done. Um, I mentioned a little bit that the existing tools have been around for more than a decade now, and Trestle is really aimed at becoming the 2.0 version of that, the one that's AI driven, the one that's gonna unseat all of these legacy solutions because none of them have embraced really what AI can do for this industry.
Hmm. How are you thinking about competition and defensibility within the context of AI?
Yeah. Another great question. Uh, in construction, well, maybe it's for all of the AI products, right? If you build something that is essentially just a ChatGPT chatbot on top of something, I think that always calls into question how defensible really is what you've built. Our AI application is AI learning and building on top of proprietary data that we've collected. And so the defensibility there is very, very strong, right? You can build the exact same AI model tomorrow, but you don't have the data to use that AI model against that Trestle does. And as Trestle continues to grow, that defensible moat just grows larger and larger and larger. And so at the end of the day, right, it's not just that, hey, we have a little chatbot you can go and talk to on the Trestle platform. No, it's that that chatbot has access to so much information that no one else does and can give you the insights that you're looking for. Um, and it's not just about, right, being able to have natural language processing.
Hmm. Maybe I will stop here for a second at AI. Like, what's your overall assessment of construction technology and AI tools, or maybe not AI tools, but tools which are using AI? Do you think we're going in the right direction? And that's a very broad question.
Yeah, I think some of it is definitely going the right direction. And if you look at all of the companies that are processing documents, I think that is definitely something that AI is just primed to help with. Right? I
Hmm.
remember, one of the large projects I did, we had maybe it was like 9,000 pages of specifications and additional reference materials, and that's a lot of stuff to read through, right? And sure, it's my job to read through it and make sure that I understand. But after I read through it the first time, and I just want to find one thing, sometimes Control F doesn't work, right, in the PDF. And so that's where AI is really, really helpful. And I think we've seen a lot of success come out of companies that are doing that. I think on the other end of the spectrum, there is a big misunderstanding in I think how construction as a industry and its processes operate and where AI goes into play. And one example I could think of there is, I was an estimator for 15 years, and estimating is very, very manual, especially when you're in infrastructure estimating. It's a lot of self-perform work, which means you're kind of like nuts and bolts, right? And figuring out the people. And we've seen a lot of people come out and say, hey, we're gonna replace all the estimators. And I, as much as I would love to see that, I think there's a misunderstanding right now in like the value of you being able to replace my estimators versus the value of these estimators and what they currently do for me, right? And so yeah, I think there's like two different sides of where AI is in this industry, and people just need to focus on the ones that are actually going to help and provide value, and not just like I've created this fun little tool, like don't you want to use it? And people are like, no, I've got a million other pieces of software. Like,
Hmm.
I don't want another piece of software that does like this one very specific thing and it doesn't do it well. And you're gonna tell me and sell me on this great efficiency thing, but I'd rather just hire a person.
Hmm. What about this thought that we had a few times in the past from not only investors but also users of software, that they don't want to see anymore software which is just providing the information faster, so like a search kind of tool, intelligent search tool, but they want to see the next step, like what task will be accomplished once this is searched in a faster way. Yeah, because um yeah, so that feels like there is a feeling that the industry, the next step would be to provide kind of some agency within a software and do something actually, rather than just give an engineer or architect or contract manager the information they're looking for. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you are 100% right. And we're seeing that right now actually in Trestle. The competitors that we're going up against, they're essentially just digitizing a process. and they're just making it easier to collect information and then give it to like a risk manager or a project manager. And what
Mhm.
Trestle has done is essentially said, we're not only going to collect it, we're going to take over the thought process of that risk manager, and then Trestle's going to give you the end result that you would have gotten from that risk manager. And so I think exactly to your point, right? It's like you need to now take over not only that digitizing the process, but some of that decision making and give me an end product that I would have gotten from a person, right? And really that's where the AI should be going. That's where I think construction software should be going as a whole.
Brilliant. Okay. Victor, so what learnings did you take from starting a journey as a startup founder, coming from like traditional engineering, estimating? Like, what did you learn?
I learned that there is so much that I don't know about so many things
Mhm,
that is exciting and terrifying at the same time.
mhm,
Yeah, I think that really is like a pretty good summation. I thought I was very, very good at what I was doing before. I was given a lot of opportunities that I'm very grateful for in engineering. And I think when you're working on a project, um, you kind of know that if I understand every page of these plans, and if I read through every single specification and document and RFI that comes in, I know all there is to know about this particular project, right?
mhm,
And you can ask me X, Y, Z, I'll know like where I need to go to get paid correctly, how I should be setting up like my cost structure to get the most benefit out, right? And what I need to build and where I can optimize. I think when you come into the startup world, that there are no confines, right? There's no like fence in which you're playing in. And
mhm,
so you're constantly trying to figure out like, did I learn enough about go to market? Maybe I
mhm,
learned enough just now. Oh, but now I just realized I didn't know anything about product management. So let me go learn about product. And then once you learn a bit about that, then you realize that, oh man, you don't know anything about, managing your back office and HR stuff. Oh, let me go learn about
mhm.
that. And you're constantly jumping around and it feels like you reach out, but you never find where the limit of what you need to know is. And I
Yeah,
think that's a big, big learning.
that's interesting. How do you manage it? Like, what's the trigger for you? What was the inflection point that you understand now that, okay, I think I know enough. I can just do it, and we will figure it out. How do you
Uh,
figure it out?
I think there's a lot of repetition, right? You have to fail a lot.
Mhm,
And each time you fail, you learn what it is that you didn't know before. And
mhm,
so you try to take those lessons and go to the next segment of right your startup journey. And those segments could be, the next hour, it could be the next day, it could be the next week, whatever it may be. And I think that's the only way. One of the things that I really, really liked, and it was probably 2 years ago now, one of the very first investors I talked to back when Trestle was like just this idea and like nothing else behind it. I kind of told him what we thought about doing, and he's like, "Listen, I think you're a good founder with a good technical fit, right, or industry fit, but like you don't know a lot of things, and like one of the things you don't know is like probably even what like go to market is. So go and learn about that, right?" And so I was like, awesome. So the next week I did nothing, but I read like, 20 books about go to market. I was like listening to podcasts left and right, right? And that at that point when I was done, I was like, I know everything there is to know about go to market, right? And sure enough, once we actually start to execute on that, you realize like I don't know anything about go to market. And so it's this
mhm.
constant journey of you
Yeah.
think you've learned enough, and then you get tested and you realize you don't know enough, and then you go and learn more again. But right, you just like build up each little piece until you get challenged and you need to learn more, and then you build again, and you learn to learn more, and you build again.
Okay. And a closing advice to people with similar background, engineers working like traditional roles, and who are probably maybe thinking about going into construction technology
Mhm.
more?
Yeah. Um, I don't know, maybe this is a bit of a controversial one.
Go for it.
Uh,
We love that.
they should just do it, right? There
Why is
is
it
such
controversial? Why is it
well,
controversial?
okay. The reasoning is controversial, maybe. There's such a shortage in the construction market right now
Hmm.
that if you take a shot at coming into construction tech, having your own startup, doing something different and trying to solve a problem, and God forbid it doesn't work, there's going to be more jobs waiting for you to go back to your old role
Hmm.
than when you left, right? The number of people that are leaving the industry I mean, I talk to a lot of my industry friends still. Nobody can hire enough estimators. Nobody can hire enough project managers, and it's only getting worse, right?
Mm.
Infrastructure is spending is going up, jobs sizes are going up, the opportunities are there, the salaries are going up, and so people shouldn't be afraid if they want to do something, they think that they can really make an impact, right? And they have the passion for it, go for it. I mean, on the other end, the only thing that is waiting for you is a great experience, a lot of learnings, and who knows, right? Maybe you're gonna find that this is really what you want to do, and everything was just leading you up to this.
Hmm. Just do it then, yeah.
Just
Okay.
do it.
Okay, great, Victor. So yeah, tell us where people can find out more about you and Trestle.
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest way. I think my LinkedIn profile is just my name. It's Victor Zhang PE. You can shoot me an email. By all means, my email is victor@gotrestle.com. And of course, our website then is just gotrestle.com.
Okay, go Trestle.
Go Trestle. We
All
need
right.
we need like a soccer team or something, that people
Yeah,
can chant that.
yeah, good tagline. Great. Okay, thank you, Victor.
Thank you.
Thanks.